Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, real quick before we get started on the show, I'm just going to talk about Treeline Academy. You've heard me say it. I can't even tell you how many times. Mark Livesey is treelineacademy.net. That's treelineacademy.net. Sign up. Use the promo code PC2020. Save yourself $20. Can't say it enough. It's awesome, amazing, most comprehensive e-scouting course out there. Check it out for yourself. Sign up. Use promo code PC2020. And now let's get to the show. All right, so I'm sitting here and I'm talking to Troy Pottenger, and you guys may remember an episode I did with him a while back, and there was a lot of positive feedback, so I wanted to get him back on and talk to him about season preparation and all that kind of stuff. So, Troy, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit for everybody?
Yeah, it's good to be back, Luke. Good to talk to you again. I think we talked, I don't know, what was it, was it almost a year ago? It's a while back.
Yeah, it's a while back.
Yeah, it was probably before season, wasn't it? Anyway, yeah. I'm Troy Pottenger. I live out here in northern Idaho, the Panhandle, up pretty close to Canada. Spent my whole life really just, putting everything I got into bow hunting whitetails in the public land mountains of northern Idaho, eastern Washington, and western Montana. And then I've been fortunate over the years to get to travel out to the Midwest and hit some really good states. And I've been to Canada, and yeah, just, love whitetails and put a lot of time into it. And it's pretty much what I like to do year round. So that's a little bit of my background. I'm actually a teacher out here in northern Idaho, and I also have a small construction / logging business that I run, that I've run every summer since I first got my teaching job 25 years ago. So, yeah.
So, Troy, I got to ask you, how'd the season end up going and wrapping up?
Well, it turned out pretty good. It's funny. I was thinking about this today when I knew I was going to be visiting with you, and I'm one of those guys that hunts specific deer that I find a lot of times I'll watch a buck grow up for years in my areas on cameras, and I'll just leave them alone. Even on the public land, I still leave them alone and I let them get age. And I like to hunt that 5.5-year-old buck and older. And I've done several podcasts in the past, and guys have asked me, when was the last time you killed a buck that was just, you didn't know? And the fact is, it's been a long time, probably a couple decades almost. And this year of all things, I end up targeting a specific buck, and I had just an absolute giant that I was after on the public lands, and was with him. I was in the game with him, was really close to his bed early, and I just never could get him to make a mistake, even though I was real close to him and I was picking him up on my cameras quite a bit. And he was far enough away from my home and from my work that played into the equation a little bit. I wasn't able to hunt him quite as much as I would have liked to, and it was purely from a distance issue that I had trying to get there in the daylight. We got to work, and work schedule was in the way, and could get up there on the weekends. Anyway, all that to say, he ended up kind of moving out on me after hunting him for almost a month, and I was really after him, so I didn't spend any time on any other deer. And then I transitioned to a different buck. Once that buck started showing me that I needed to move on him and try to find him somewhere else because he was moving before the rut. And I transitioned hunting two different states. So I moved back over to Idaho and started hunting this other buck because he was starting to show me that he was killable. And I do play that game with all these big deer. When they're killable and I'm in the game with them and I'm real close to their beds and I know I'm going to get them in the daylight and I'm seeing it on my trail cameras and stuff, that's when I get on them. I really go after them hard once I think they're killable. So anyway, I moved into started chasing that big deer and was I was pretty sure it was going to happen. And I ended up having this trespasser buck that when I shot him, when I killed him, it was just right at the end of November, early December. When I killed him, when he came in, I knew it wasn't my target buck, but he was such a good deer, and I could tell he was an old deer. Um, there's no way I was going to pass him. So I shot him and killed him, and he's a great buck. He's really big, heavy tank of a buck, and he was just a 4x4. And actually, when I shot him, I didn't know it. I knew he was either a big 4x4 or a big 5x5, just because he had a big, heavy, tall frame. And his body, was just dead. It was dead nuts. I could tell he was 5 or 6 years old. So anyway, I shot him and killed him, and he didn't go far. And when I walked up on him, he surprised me. I'd actually called my son. I'd actually texted Ty, my boy, and I said, "Hey, I just shot a big deer." And he's like, "Dad, was it?" He said, "Was it Romeo?" I said, "No." I said, at first, I said, "Actually, I thought it was, but I got down." And then I said, "No, it's not Romeo." I said, "You got to get over here." So
So
he was in it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so you had never seen this buck on any of your cameras or
Well,
anything?
hold up. I have so many cameras and so many bucks that I keep track of that it didn't process with me yet. And this was one of those bucks that after the fact, and after I got to settle down and go home and look at all my old pictures and go through my old sheds, then I realized that it actually was a buck that I had very minimal pictures of from the past. And it was because I was never really close to this deer I killed. The reason I killed him is he was out doing a big, I think he was, I've seen it for years. These big deer in our country out here, the, the end of the actual breeding of the rut is usually the last week of December. Excuse me, the first week of December is the end of the breeding, not the last week.
Okay.
So all that to say, what I think I did is caught this big deer at this scrape that I have. I caught him making a big swing through the mountains to check for the last does during
Nice.
that first week of December. And I think that's why I caught him where I caught him. Uh, but at the time, at the moment, no, I didn't think I knew him at all. Plus, the sheds that we actually had off of him, my son, who has a freaking photographic memory, Ty was like, "Dad, I think I know this deer. I think we have one of his sheds from like 3 years ago," which we go through hundreds of sheds, at least 100 a year, new ones. So I was like, "Okay, Ty," because I'll tell you what, I don't doubt that kid. Every time he brings something up like that, he's always spot on when he finds a picture of the shed. Or, we don't keep all of our older little sheds. We get rid of them, we sell them. We keep just the big ones. So all this to say, ended up, you post the pictures, you kill the deer. A good friend of mine that hunts quite a ways away from me, but within distance of this deer's travel, said, "Oh yeah, Troy, I know that deer. I've had him on camera for 4 years." And he said, "Troy, that deer's 6 years old." So then we put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and sure enough, it was a buck that my son and I had just a small amount of uh, history with, but nothing to where we were targeting him or anything like that, because we were never getting him on a regular basis. And the stand that I had hung like 5 or 6 days before for the actual targeted buck, when I shot mine, I knew once I walked up on him and it was a different deer. And I kind of thought it was when I was walking up on him. He only went like 30 yards. I knew my son could jump in that stand and try to kill that big deer I was after. So that all played into my mind when I shot that deer. I thought, well, if I kill a big trespasser, I call them trespassers. If I end up killing a big trespasser here, which I ended up doing, I already was thinking, man, Ty can jump over here and hunt this big 6x5 that I'm after. So I ended up killing this big 4x4 mainframe 4x4. He came in just shy of 150, so he's a big 4 point. And Ty, and I and this other friend of ours got together after it was out, and it was evident that it was a buck that we knew a little bit. But my buddy who sent me the pictures and trail cams of him said, "Yeah, he's 6 years old," and it made sense because when he walked in, I could just see everything you ever want to see when it comes to aging him body wise, and his big, heavy, tall tine, heavy rack, big, heavy tines. He was just a mature buck. So, yeah. So that turned out good. And then my son jumped on the other big deer. You know, I'm glad you asked me, because Ty, my boy, took over that spot, and we had the big deer that I was after was a 6x5. We called him Romeo. And Ty ended up, and it's all on film, Ty ended up having Romeo roll in on him about 4 or 5 days later. And we knew it was going to happen because we were so close to his bedding area. And he rolled through, and Ty had a standoff with this buck on film for almost 20 minutes. And the buck was straight on. Ty could have shot him straight on if he would have wanted to take that shot at about 23 or 24 yards. But Ty elected not to take the straight on shot and was just waiting for him to turn one way or the other. And I don't know how that big deer did it. It's on film. He wasn't spooked or acting crazy or nothing, but he just turned. And when he turned, he did a full, like a 180. And then he was within, in 1.5 to 2 seconds, he was butt to Ty. And Ty, like Ty and I said, after we watched the footage, and we're film study guys, we're both, Ty's going to go play college football. And I used to do all that stuff. So we were watching film on this buck, and we're breaking everything down. And I'm like, man, I think I might have tried to shoot him right when he turned there and stopped him. And Ty's like, yeah, but he goes, Dad, the way that buck was acting, I thought for sure he was just going to turn and walk right out broadside in front of me. And that's what he looked like he was going to do. But instead, he did a 180. And then he simply just walked back into the timber, and he messed around back in there for another 5 or 10 minutes and then left. So Ty had a close encounter with him, but he never did get an arrow in him. And Ty hunted his ass off for that deer. Like, he was doing all day sits in the coldest weather we had. He was in snow. I mean, he was doing this every day he had free till the season closed. And then that stand is in a money spot. We had a big scrape up there that deer would use daily. Of course, we're targeting. And by the way, we had between Ty and I both hunting that spot that I hung, he had bucks there every day in the daylight cruising. I mean, it is a cruising location. It was at the end of the rut. The bucks were looking for the last few does that were not covered. And we had a doe there that had not been covered yet by a buck. She still had her fawn with her. And that fawn was about to get kicked off when I shot my buck. And then the buck that Ty tried to kill that I was actually targeting came in and bred that doe while Ty was trying to kill that buck there, if that makes sense. So we knew we were in the game. And the big deer that I tried to kill and Ty ended up hunting, the big deer, the big 6x5 that we called Romeo, he lived really close and bedded quite often in an area. The bucks in these mountains don't bed in the same bed every day, but he was real close to us area wise. I would say there were days where he was bedded 150 yards from Ty, maybe 200, and other days based on the wind direction, he might have went over the ridge a little to get better wind and bed up, but he was never probably more than 300 or 400 yards from us ever, which may sound like a lot to farm country ground type of, smaller congregated deer, but in the mountains, 200, 300, 400 yards is nothing for a buck to travel and get out of his bed. There was a lot of days, though, I know based on the camera, he was bedded 150, 200 yards from us max, maybe 100 some days. And anyway, all that to say that spot was a hell of a hang and hunt spot, because we had other bucks there that 99% of anybody with a bow and arrow in their hand would have been happy to whack and, take a shot at. We had a couple beautiful 3-year-olds that were using that spot too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would have been more than happy to take one of them too.
we were excited after I killed my buck, because we're thinking, man, this stand right here is gonna produce 2 bucks that are 6 years old.
Yeah,
that
that's
doesn't
amazing.
happen very often in the mountains. That's not a common occurrence. So, and Ty held out. He let every other buck go. He did it. He did what he did the year before. He passed up 15 or 20 bucks this year wanting to kill a 5 or 6 year old buck.
That's a hard thing to do.
He's
I've
and he's 17.
yeah, that's a lot of discipline. I mean, I'm 37 and I still don't have that much discipline. If I see a decent one come along, it's
He
hard
has
to pass it up.
it is, and he does it. He doesn't do it because that's what his dad does. He does it because he enjoys the game. He enjoys like he says to me all the time. He goes, I just enjoy seeing those young bucks come by, Dad, because I know what they can become.
It's true.
Um, and he's killed some big deer. He's only 17, but he's killed a couple whoppers and public land bucks. He's killed a 166 class or 65, and the other one was 150. So, and then he's killed 3 or 4 bucks that are growing up were not that class, but to already have a couple big mountain bucks that are 50 and 60s under his belt, he has a little different perspective to where he and I kind of have a thing we do. We love to eat deer meat. You and I were talking about it before we started the podcast, but we always fill our tags at the end of the season if we need to on an extra doe. We have some spots that produce a lot of does, so we do that too, and we know we're going to get the meat we want. So we like to see those young bucks get some age on them.
So one of the things I was kind of trying to allude to earlier that I maybe I didn't clarify, but so if you get a stand or a spot that you think's a good spot and that wind holds to where you can hunt it multiple times, is that something you will do, or do you try and kind of keep it limited to how many times you hunt a spot?
I get this question a lot, and I almost feel like I'm the Lone Ranger at this because I take great I take great pride, and I dissect a location to where I can usually, well, actually, I won't hang a stand until I'm happy with it, but I can usually hunt it on 3 out of the 4 wind directions. So I'm usually in the game about 75% of the day, or 75% of the wind opportunities there. And remember, I'm using daily thermals too.
So you
Um,
won't hang in necessarily the same exact tree, but you've
I,
got multiple spots picked out based upon your thermals and wind.
no, no, I will find that spot, that tree location that will work for me for so many different scenarios. And I usually try to have at least 75% of the wind scenarios that are common for that area, including mixing with the daily thermals, if you follow me.
Yeah.
So I
No, I
break
do.
all that down in my mind before I hang a stand. I go through all of it. Morning thermal with the predominant prevailings and with an occasional uh, a wind that I do expect to get at least once or twice a week. And then I usually set up everything to where the most, the least wind that I need to worry about is going to be in my favor 75% of the time or better. And on those days, if it's blowing towards that bedding area, I just don't go up there. But I'm always camped out. I probably don't talk about it enough, but I get in tight to these big bucks bedding zones, an area they really like to bed in during that month of the season. And where I'm set up, and I'm going to answer your question, just hang with me for a sec. But and it's very complicated because where I set up for September buck is completely different on the same whitetail buck when I'm setting up on him during the rut and in late November, if you follow me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You get all that. So
Yeah.
am I going to bounce all over in different trees up there near his bedding area where he completely feels safe from wolves and mountain lions? Hell no, not in this country. Because he's got that figured out over 5 or 6 years of his life to where he really dials in because he's old. Young bucks screw that up and either get eaten by a lion or a wolf before they're 5 or 6,
Yeah.
or they get scared to death and they figure it out and they stay alive. So what I'm getting at is I'll get up and put in a primary stand setup like I did on this deer. And I put it in late November. I mean, it wasn't like I had this sitting here the whole season, but I knew where he was. I knew where he was bedding. I had snow to I could backtrack him a little ways. I could see where he was coming from. So I moved in on him real aggressive, set this stand up, and I killed my trespasser, and Ty had his opportunity on the big deer within a 10-day period. Now, were we coming in and hanging and hunting every day? No way. Not on that big deer. I didn't want to make the noise. I didn't want to deal with if I would have went in there and hung and hunt and tore it down, that deer would have probably picked me off or knew I was in there making too much. It had been too much commotion. Plus, the elevation gain that I had to make and get to him was a nightmare. I mean, it was a pull. It was a couple miles up in there to get to him. So I set it up to best suit my situation for him. And then what I would have done is I always have my mobile set up. Let's say if I wouldn't have killed and I still would have been hunting that bigger deer that Ty almost killed. If I would have needed to move, say 50 yards, that's where, instead of tearing down my existing stand and making any noise, that's where I would have came in with my mobile, and I would have went and hang and hunted maybe a day on that other spot to try to kill him, and I probably would have left it, and had two spots to kill him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
Because, instead of really, I knew this deer was killable. He was daylight walking. He was making what I call making mistakes, and he was so comfortable up there where he's bedding. He had no idea with our entrance and exit. We were literally coming from the backside of the mountain and coming in a long way around to get to him and hunt him. Now, if we would have came up the face of the mountain on this deer, we'd have never seen him once, if that makes sense. Because he's sitting there with the thermal all day.
Yeah.
We were backdooring this guy, and we were sneaking in right on his wind edge on the backside of him and catching where he liked to travel through over a big knob and down into a big bowl that's just all timber. And he's servicing all the does down in there for the last few years. Another thing we had on this big deer is we've been watching him grow up and watching his patterns for 3 years before we even hunted him this year.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of
helps.
info on him. Yeah. We're not going in blind on this deer.
So let's I got a question about that then. So when you are setting up your stand and you know where his bed is and where that travel path is, how far off or away from are you trying to set up on that travel path to give you like a buffer for your wind?
Yeah. And something that I neglected to add, and it's super important, is, I hung this stand and I had that deer, or Ty had that deer out of that stand right after me, and I figured I was going to get a shot at him, but I'd found his set of sheds last year, and I hung that stand 70 yards from where I found those sheds because I knew where he was bedding. So to answer your question now, how far off of his travel pattern was I?
Yeah.
And off of the predominant prevailing wind that mixes with the thermals morning and evening, I was probably, I had it dialed. I'd like to explain this setup because it was killer. It was 15 to 20 yards off of his major favorite trails that he takes to get to where all the doe family groups live.
Okay.
And I'm just set up coming in from the backside, never coming in where my wind blows into his bedding area, literally coming in up underneath him through a north face of timber, but 500 vertical feet below him, circling around a ridge, coming across the top of a saddle, sneaking up the south side of his north facing bedding area, coming in the back door on him, hiking up the mountain, sliding into the tree stand where he likes to exit his northeast face bedding area, and he likes to exit and travel to the south and the west because that's the predominant winds we get out here. We do get some northern winds. So even when I got a north wind, it was blowing for me back towards the south, and I was on the back side of that, so I was always safe. Anyway, he was always traveling this heavy ocean spray ceanothus thicket and heavy timber to get down to this south and western destination that he had, to where a bunch of doe family groups lived, and way down below that there were some ag fields way down in the bottoms, probably 2 miles away. All that to say, I set up literally right on the edge of this tiny little opening up high, probably 30-yard circle. And that circle opening served for me, this little tiny meadow served for me as a buffer for him. He would always come in and then skirt the edge of the timber and go through the timber. So I set up on the other side of the opening to where he rarely would walk way out around or cut right through the middle of the opening. So it protected me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
From him, because he never wanted to walk right across that opening. He would always just bend along with the brush on the edge of the brush through the timber, which gave us a perfect broadside shot of him, as long as we shot him before he got into the heavy timber.
Right. I've always
Anyway,
kind of wondered that, like when I think I'm setting up for a shot lane or something like that, whether or not I'm actually putting myself at a disadvantage because the deer is going to skulk around that clearing or kind of, hug some heavy stuff that I'm not seeing or something like
right.
that.
And what really helped me with this deer, and it was money. I mean, it was money. Ty and I talked about it. I probably would have shot that big buck. Ty's a little more, well, he's great, but he's less experienced than me. And the one thing I've learned being a mountain bow hunter, you get one chance at him.
Yeah.
And I've made some really tough shots in my life, because I'm not afraid to take a good shot, but it's tight. Like, you got 2 inches, you got to do it right. You got to hit perfect. And I'm being candid here. I get them killed when I see them. If they give me an opportunity, they're getting shot. And I'm not saying I don't take stupid shots. They're usually close, under 20 yards or 25 yards max. But I'm pretty aggressive when I shoot. If he gives me a chance and he quarters enough to give me a slip that arrow in behind that front shoulder, I do it and I get it done. And I also shoot a setup that just blows through deer. I blow through them. Now, have I ever hit a deer really bad and had it run off? Yes. In 2004, I did. And that's the last time I had one that I screwed up on, and I found him in January. But all that to say, that taught me a good lesson about, you can get a deer killed pretty damn easy if he's under 20 yards and you have the right setup. And as long as he opens up to you enough to give you that shot, I'm very comfortable with, and I look at it this way. I better be comfortable with 1 inch or 2 inches of clearance, because if I'm not a very damn good shot at 20 yards.
Yep.
At 20 yards, you should be able to get that done. And Ty felt bad. He's like, Dad, yeah, I probably should have shot him. I said, no. I said, you have to think for yourself. You have to be comfortable. And I can see, son, why you didn't take that shot watching the footage.
Yeah, that's
He goes,
what I
yeah,
find.
but he's like, Dad, you would have killed him. And I said, yeah, I probably would have. But you're not me. I've got 30 plus years in at this. I probably would have killed him. I probably would have. But I'm proud of you, son, for you thinking for yourself and shooting what's comfortable for you, And Ty said it. Ty said it on the big deer he was going to kill. He's like, Dad, I just thought for sure the way he was behaving, and you can see it on film, he was never skittish. He just those big deer sometimes just walk back into the timber and work their way through the dark timber, and that's just what they do.
I've kind of come to realize, like, more than anything, comfort level plays into your shot placement.
Yep.
If you go into it with the confidence and comfort level, you're going to be calm enough and have that ease to, put it where you're actually going and do a shot sequence or whatever you do to get your shot. That if you have that comfort level, you're going to do it. But if you're on edge, you're kind of doubting yourself, you're gonna mess up on that shot. And I actually did that this year.
Yep, I think it's a great point. Every person needs to know what their comfort level is and where their confidence level is. And for me, it's if a whitetail buck is within 25 yards of me, he's in trouble. Because if he gives me anything, I'm going to kill him. And that's just how it's been for me over the years. And it's where I'm comfortable. But if a buck's 35, 40 yards from me, it's funny. I really don't even think about picking my bow up or shooting him. Okay. I like him close. And it's because close has always worked out great for me.
So let's talk about that then. Your setup. What are you shooting for an arrow? Like
Okay.
I'm shooting like a I think mine is 618 grains overall,
Yep.
and I got 125 grains on the point, and then I think my arrows are like 12.1 grains per inch or something like that.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we're heavy. I'm heavy too. We'd have to do the math. Some of the arrow geek guys out there that geek out all over that, and I think it's great. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that in a negative way because I love it. But I shoot a 125 grain head. I shoot a 75 grain brass insert.
Okay.
I shoot a 29-inch FMJ, and then I shoot, just the Blazer little fletches. So there you go.
So you're probably sitting because I think my inserts are 100 grain inserts and they're half certs. So I shoot
Okay.
the Victory, and it's got the stainless steel woven within the carbon fiber. I think it's injection
Right.
or something like that. And I'm just so happy with that heavy setup. And like I've
Yeah.
learned, like the one year I shot a doe, and I don't know why I always shoot with my quiver on, but for some reason I just took it off that day, and I picked up my bow and took the shot. And as soon as I let go of that arrow, I go, oh crap, what did I do? And I hit 2 inches to the left. And, that magical pocket there, right behind that shoulder that everybody, you want to hit. It hit 2 inches to the left of that, and it blew through bone like nobody's business at 30 yards.
Yep.
And I was just like, holy cow. And then
Yep.
on my deer this year, on my first buck I shot, same thing. I had to put a second shot in him. It was one lung liver, and he'd already been 8 hours, 6 hours, and he was still alive, but he was hurt bad. He wasn't getting up.
Right.
And so I put a second shot in him, and I blew through both shoulder blades, and it clipped the top of his heart right off. And after blowing through both shoulder blades like that with that arrow, I was like, okay, I don't ever have to worry about bone. Just put my shot on, and if I'm, I mean, not that I'm going to ever take a bad shot, but I'm never going to have to worry about that. I think within, 20, 25 yards.
That's my philosophy. And just so the listeners are clear, I haven't had terrible shots. I haven't got lucky because I shoot a heavy setup. I'm just like you. I like the idea, the philosophy of if, and it does happen, that 2 inches off happens, you're sending a projectile that's going to do its work anyway.
Yeah, it's going to pull itself through. Yeah.
Right. And that's a lot of that for me stems from growing up hunting elk, bear, whitetails my entire life. We've always shot big animals out here. Idaho has always been a fixed blade only state because of it. I'm a huge fan of just a fixed blade head because I don't ever have to worry about a moving part being compromised in any way.
Yeah.
So my heavy setup I've had forever. I can't remember the last time I didn't have at least a 50 grain insert and a 125 up front.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what mine is what you got going now. I think I 25 grains heavier,
Yep.
just to, I wanted that magical number for some reason in my head when I was at the bow shop. I was playing around and I was like, no, I want to try and get 14 and a half FOC or 14%.
Right.
And I think that was my target. So we ended up throwing 100 grain in there, and it met that. And so I was, happy.
Yeah. And I know, I got a good buddy in Alberta that shoots all the big animals, moose, everything with his bow every year. And I remember talking to him 20 years ago about this. He was always getting on my butt. Yep, you get that FOC perfect, Troy. And I said, man, I agree with you. I like it. And he got me to bump up to 75.
Yeah.
And that was a long time ago. So it's been a long time since I haven't shot, 75 and 125, 200 grains up front.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
It's a good setup that way.
It is. I shot a big whitetail. I've got a picture somewhere on my Instagram. It's a great big 5x5. My wife's in the picture with me, sitting behind me. I shot that buck at like 12 to 15 yards, and my memory is not perfect, but I know it was really close. And all he gave me was 2-inch quartering two, but I hunt really high, and that's something else I'll share with your listeners. I'm setting at 25 feet, and I like it. I prefer it in the mountains. When I go to Oklahoma, when I hunt the Midwest, I really don't hunt that high. I don't feel like I need to. I feel like the ground, the terrain's different. A lot of times out here, I'm staring into a hillside that's steep. So I get pretty high. So if you can picture, if you will, as I talk you through this, I'm hunting high. I'm shooting down through animals at a different angle than most bow hunters. And a lot of my arrows, like the buck I shot this year, if you look at him on Instagram, I think I have one picture, you can see it blew out the bottom of his chest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was my first buck this year too. The same thing, and I actually had to call a tracking dog. Like I called him because there wasn't enough blood, and I ended up I was actually lining it up for the podcast. It was kind of funny. Line the guy up for the podcast, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm just letting you know if you need any help, give me a call." And then
Yeah.
it was gonna rain. I mean, it was literally gonna start raining. And I was like, "Man, I won't find this buck until the next day if I don't." So I called him. He came out, and it was raining, downpour in fact, before he got there. And I'm thinking, "Oh, I'm not gonna find this deer." But when I was talking to him on the phone, I was like, he's like, "What kind of, is there hair on the ground or anything?" I said, "Yeah, there's a little bit of, some brown and white." And he's like, "Really? White? Oh, that's not good." And I go, "No, no, no. I don't think you understand. I was 30 feet up in the air on
Right.
this deer because they're coming over a hillside and
Yep.
I wanted to be above that hillside." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And he couldn't picture it in his mind until he got out there. And then he looked at my setup and he's like, "Oh, I see what you're talking about now." So
Yeah.
like, yeah, it blew out, towards the belly hair on the
Yep.
bottom,
Yep.
but it still went through him. It was just he stepped at the last second, and I was so focused on trying to do my shot that I didn't focus on my sight picture, and he turned a little bit during that shot as I was getting ready to let go on him, and I didn't compensate for that, and I just ended up clipping one lung in the liver, but he was
I
recovered, and it all worked out. But I totally understand what you're saying with that whole thing
a
about
lot of
the high up.
a lot of my bucks don't go very far. Like this year's buck went 25 to 30 yards, I believe, max. It was dead. Um, that big buck I was telling you about, my wife's in the picture with that buck. It was unbelievable. I shot him, and that heavy setup. To get back to this, that heavy setup was so impressive. I've never seen anything like it. I don't know if I will again, but he was real close to me. Again, I think he was between 12, 15 yards, somewhere in that range, and I was real high, and it was a steep hillside, and he came down to this big scrape under me. But anyway, he was standing there. He barely turned enough to squeak that arrow down in high down through him, and it blew out the bottom of his chest. This was no joke. It hit him so hard and blew through him that the arrow stuck in the ground with him on the ground, and he never got up from that spot. He died right there. I've never
Yeah.
seen anything like that. It was like tacking him to the ground. I'd
Yeah.
never seen anything like it. All he did is his back feet, he kicked and he spun a full circle like doing a snow angel, and it was dead.
I've never seen that with a bow. I've seen it
I've
with a
never seen
shotgun,
it with a
but
bow, and I don't know if I'll ever see it again. But I
yeah,
hit him just perfect and blew right down through his heart.
yeah,
I mean, it was steep. I shot right down through him. It was ridiculous how steep I was on top of him. Because you're
no, it's
30, I was probably 30 feet up in that tree, and he was probably 12 to 15 yards right under me. So I'm
yeah,
shooting at a real steep angle. Anyway, yeah, pretty impressive stuff with that. I'll never ever shoot a light setup till the day
no,
I'm done.
me neither, me neither. But so with all that and talking about that, I want to touch base and talk about the whole what you're doing now to get prepared for next season. So I mean, are you resetting cameras, or are you waiting on that? Are you kind of scouting, finding beds, shed hunting? What do you got going on?
So my season ended right around 1st of January. We filled every tag we had for the meet. Put some depredation elk tag, and we had some tags we filled to fill the freezers. So that's real important to us. And then as soon as we're done filling the freezers and taking care of our extra doe tags and all that, we took care of all that. Ty and I did, and we as soon as that happens, we 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 play the game out here with the snow, and I have cameras strung all over the country in places. So some of my whitetails I literally cannot get to right now. I can't get to the cameras. They've migrated. A lot of my bucks have already migrated 5 or 10 miles away to get through the winter. So those backcountry, real far off cameras that are back in over 2 or 3 mountain passes, I'm not getting to right now. So yeah, I'm working on the low ground right now. What I consider my low ground, I'm shed hunting it, I'm scouting it. My low ground is all the kind of 4,000 foot elevation and lower, where my 4,000 feet and lower elevation mountains, I tend to not get any migration. So my deer stay. So I'm targeting all of those areas right now because I can physically get into those areas with the amount of snow. And I do a lot of backtracking this time of the year, really just finding where all my big deer are liking to bed, looking for those specific bucks sheds, target bucks for and potential up and comers for next year. That's what I'm targeting right now. Like when I go over to Washington and even out of state, I'm any state where it allows me to put minerals and stuff out this time of year, I put it out. So I'm helping the deer. And then I'm also chomping at the bit for the snow levels to drop so I can get into some of my real backcountry buck areas that where the bucks actually migrate, because I have cameras that I leave out all winter. And I do it on purpose just to see which bucks survived, how long the bucks stayed in there, how much snow it took them to push them out before they migrated. And then I go back in and replenish all of those mineral sites or whatever, and just get ready. I mean, I'm getting ready for April, May, and June when they start really putting on some antlers. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And tons of shed hunt. I love to shed hunt. I've got a shed dog, and a lot of times I find where my bucks pretty much hide out and live in that late season from all the pressure that they've received. I'll find their sheds, and then the next year, like I did this year on that big 6x5 that Tyson almost killed, I literally was able to identify his bedding zone in the late season because of where he had shed, because a lot of our bucks shed in the middle of January. So they give away that information to us because they haven't left their favorite hideout when the season gets over around Christmas, and then they shed in the middle of January. They haven't left yet. So they give us that evidence of where we need to hunt them that next year in that late season. So we're doing a
No,
lot
that's
of
good.
that.
I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good stuff. And I've often killed bucks. Some of my bigger deer, the older, bigger deer that I've ever killed, I've got a lot of their sheds on the wall.
Yeah.
And those shed finds lead me to their favorite hideouts, their bedding zones for that late season.
So once you're kind of done with your shed hunting and kind of getting the evidence and getting proof that they're still alive and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
what are you doing, say, early summer, late spring to try and prepare for the season? Are you at that point gonna? I know you set up like a lot of mock scrapes and you
Yep.
use I can't remember what brand it is that
The
you
buck
tend
fever
yeah,
synthetics.
the buck fever synthetics and stuff like
Yep.
that. So are you doing that then, or what are you kind of doing then
Yeah.
towards the
Yeah.
the late?
I'm so let's talk late winter, early spring, right?
Yeah. Well, I was
Uh,
gonna say after you're done doing the shed hunting. So like,
so I kind of wrap up my shed hunting in April, end of April.
okay,
The month of April though is a combo month for me. I'm not only just finishing up my shed hunting, when I'm out in the woods, I'm scouting, I'm shed hunting, and when I see the right situation and scenario unfold in front of my eyes when I'm out there, I'm marking in my mind where I want to come back and probably build a mock scrape. Uh, when it gets into April and May, I'm building those mock scrapes,
okay,
and I'm thinking way ahead to, will this buck be in this location when the August 30th opener is? So, for example, and I think this will tie it all together, I spoke really early in the podcast about a giant that I was hunting in September, right?
yeah,
And I was on him. I was in the game. I really thought I had him killed. And I spent a month with him, meaning I didn't have a month of days, but the whole month of September, I only hunted that buck. That's how good of a buck he is. Like, probably be the biggest deer I ever killed in my life.
Nice.
Gross score, gross wise, and he was a stud 5-year-old. So incredible genetics for being 5. And I really felt I had him. I mean, I was just in the game with him all the time, but the distance I had to go to hunt him was my biggest obstacle. Just, I felt like I needed a few more days to get a sit on him, because those old deer don't make many daylight mistakes in the early season, because they don't move much during the day in the early season. They don't need to. It's hot. They lay up and do all their work at, they get up and eat. That's it. They check
Yeah.
a licking branch. That's it. They're not doing anything but a licking branch and eating and drinking. That's it. So you talk to any guy that really targets real older age class structure, a big deer early season, they're not moving as much as they are during the scraping and rutting phase of the rut. They're just not. There's no reason to. So anyway, I'm already game planning for him, hoping that he's alive. Can't get to the camera yet because of the snow. But I'm already game planning for him, strategically thinking about where I'm going to add setups for him to try to figure out what he does after the month of September, because that's where he gets really sporadic. And then on my other deer, I'm doing the same thing. If there's any improvement I can make to where I'm setting up, how I'm getting in, if I need to clean out a trail, if I need to create a new pathway into a certain stand that I really like over a big community scrape, I'll do those types of things. Just trying to improve every setup I have. At the same time, I'm dropping cameras and building mock scrapes in new areas, even in new spots within a big buck's terrain and his core area. Because a lot of times with these older deer, sometimes you're 100 yards or 200 yards off of an area that he really wants to travel through and likes to travel through, especially in these mountains. And if you just move 100 or 200 yards, that can be all the difference in the world to what he prefers for travel.
Yeah.
And if you will, my country is just straight timber, as far as the eye can see, a sea of timber. So there's canopy everywhere, with the occasional logging, clear cut, little tiny meadow. Everything's steep and real, topographical. So with all that being said, you're trying to find funnels that aren't a traditional type of funnel or travel route that you would see on a farm country map, where it's
So
really identified.
so when you're dropping these scrapes, are you like how big are you going with them? Are you making them just like a little satellite scrape, or are you trying to make and create like a big primary scrape?
I only target community scrapes, which are giant, and they show decades of existence. So when I build a mock scrape, I don't waste my time on anything but a scrape that a mature buck would identify with when he sees it visually and smells it. He smells multiple deer profiles in it, and he sees multiple licking branches, and he sees years of use. And what happens is, when I do this, and I get this on video all the time, when a mature buck first finds one of my mock scrapes, he'll literally come in and almost circle it and really look it over. And it's my impression from watching these videos over and over on these big older deer, and a lot of them I've killed, and some, a lot of them have got away from me, but still, they always come in and they act like, how in the hell did I miss this in my terrain? So,
Yeah.
and I put several deer profile scents in it. I have the Buck Fever has 4 or 5 different urine scents that I use. Back in the old days, before I ever had a product, I would just dig the dirt up on a big community scrape, and I would put it in Ziplocs and freeze it. And then I'd transfer that dirt to another scrape up to 100 miles away. It didn't matter. Or I would save it to the next year, freeze it, and throw all that dirt, sprinkle it all over in a mock that I built. So that's how I
Nice.
used to. That's
Yeah.
how I used to transfer multiple deer urine profiles.
That's a good idea.
Nowadays, yeah, nowadays I just use the different profiles that buck fever has for different urines, and I'll put them in the mock scrape, and I'll make multiple licking branches and make them look like they're authentic to that neck of the woods. And that
Yeah.
comes from scouting too. Anyway, when a buck walks in, he sees it, it's a big visual. And then all the scent is there too. And usually with my mature bucks, they immediately want to know a lot more about it. They frequent it, and then they want to come back to it and understand why they've missed it so much in their terrain.
Yeah. So when you're putting it in, like, are you picking a location that has the licking branches, or are you putting licking branches there yourself, kind of placing them or something?
I do it two different ways. If I happen to come across the perfect species of licking branch that I'm looking for that neck of the woods, that area, and I identify that by scouting that area first, I just use what's already there. And I'll build the scrape below it because it's the right location. I can set a tree stand in there. I go through all that in my mind. Can I get in and out of here? Can I hunt this? Is it a very killable location? Am I near a big buck's core bedding area? All that has to come into play first. Or do I believe I'm near a big buck's core bedding area based on the habitat and the terrain? And
Right.
I can usually nail that pretty close as far as just reading the lay of the land, the habitat, the vegetation, all that. And then if I don't have what I need at the location I really like and I want to be able to get into and hang a stand at, then I'll harvest the type of species of the most favorable species that I see of vegetation or a tree branch that the deer in that area like to use for a community scrape. And it's because I found the community scrapes already. I found
Okay.
some. And it's because I've shed hunted and scouted the hell out of the area to where I've located what the deer like. I'll mimic that. I'll even cut the branches off, pack them through the woods, put them where they need to be, hang them on a tree. Uh, I'll strap them on with an extra trail camera strap, whatever it takes. I'll hang it out at the right height. I will sculpt with my rubber gloves on all the licking branches. I'll twist them, beat the hell out of them, make them look like they've been there for decades. And then I'll blow the dirt out and make a great big scrape. And then I'll add all the urine profiles to it. That way, when the first big mature buck rolls in and sees that, he immediately gets a scent profile and a visual that looks exactly like the other community scrapes in his neck of the woods, and he wants to know why in the hell he's missed this one.
that's that's a good idea. So
It works.
after you're doing that, and you're setting up your scrapes, then are you just kind of putting cameras on them, letting them soak, and then how
Yeah,
long are you letting them
exactly.
go before you check them?
Right. Let's say I built these from February all the way into May.
Okay.
Because late February, even when I'm shed hunting, if I come across a location that just has everything I need in my checklist, including a big set of sheds on my pack, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will lay one down right there. And so I'm always prepared. It's always in my pack. I always have my kit with me. But how long do I let them soak? Licking branches get hit year round. Everybody that's listening, and I hope everybody realizes that the licking branches get worked year round socially. The dirt part of the scrape just needs to show that it has residual sense of urine in the dirt, and deer can smell that for months after the season down in the dirt, just like a dog can. Anyway, I'll usually always put now because I want the evidence. I always put one camera up real high, and I use the Spy High system. And it's public land, so I'll hang one 12 or 15 feet up high and kind of back, overlooking the whole scenario with the scrape as the centerpiece. And then I'll usually take a camera, and I'll disguise it. I'll brush it in, whatever I got to do to get it down on the ground level. And I'll usually shoot it right out at the scrape licking branches and through the licking branches and put it on video because I like to watch 30 to 60 seconds of video on these big bucks because it tells me a lot about their personality
Yeah.
and how they come in, how they behave, how the does behave, everything. And then if it's a really great spot and I have high hopes for it, I'll add a third camera on picture on the scrape. So one set way back, one on picture down low, not low, but down to get really good up closes, and then one on video. But always at least 2 cameras, always 2 cameras on a good scrape. And one is always on video.
No, that makes sense. I don't do a lot of video. I should do more video. And then again, I don't run a whole lot of cameras either, but I always feel like I'm missing shots of that deer or not really seeing the full picture when I don't have video.
Yeah, if you run video, you learn the intricacies about that deer. You can really study his body language and his mannerisms, especially when he comes in around, like say you're hunting a target, like if I'm hunting a big target buck, that video will show me how he acts around other deer. If he's a real dominant guy, or if he's a little more, hey, I'll wait back till other deer walk through here to make sure the coast is clear, or if he's a bully. If I get on a great big bully buck that I like and I want to kill, he's in trouble because bullies tend to get killed.
That's because
they
more responsive to those grunts and stuff.
Yeah, well, they just screw up. Yeah, they want to dominate the scrape. They want to dominate all the does. They want to dominate all the bucks, so they show up in daylight more often.
Yeah, no, that makes
sense. The hardest bucks to kill are the big recluses, the ones that, they get their girls, but they also don't have to get all the girls. Those are the hardest big deer to kill, the oldest. And again, when I say big, I mean old. Those old bucks that are careful. Yeah, and then I just let them soak. I let them soak I've got cameras out right now in some incredible traditional community scrapes that I've been able to kill multiple bucks over the years at those scrape sites. Understand though, at these scrape sites, these community scrapes, they were there decades before I was alive.
No kidding.
Yeah. I've got a couple scrapes that I've hunted since I was in my teens.
Wow.
Which is incredible, but it does happen in the big woods. The deer herds in the area, the doe family groups, the young bucks, they all get raised. And all the mother does teach the young before they kick them off, or while they keep their does with them the rest of their life, their deer family groups, they literally teach their young where these community scrapes are so that they can leave their communication information.
Man, that makes me wonder if any of the places that I hunt have something like that. I mean, you would think they probably do at some point, but I don't think I've ever come across something that would be like that.
Every place I've ever hunted in North America, the whitetail buck, there's always a community hub scrape somewhere in an area where all the deer can go to. They can scent check it and identify who's still alive, who made it through the hunting season, who made it past the predators for the winter, and they leave their information there to just let the herd know, hey, I'm still here, I'm still alive, I'll be around. And the older, the bigger, the older and the more breeder tendencies that the older bucks have, they'll tend to dominate those scrapes as they get older a little more, or they'll get pushed away out of an area if they're not the dominant buck in there, and they might go somewhere else.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to start looking more for. I mean, I found community scrapes, but I don't know. Some of them I've stumbled upon. They weren't there 2 years ago, and they're there now. So.
And that's not, to me, in my definition of a community scrape. That's not a community scrape.
Okay.
If you find a true community traditional scrape, you'll see years and years of evidence of it being used. You'll see decades of evidence.
Because some of the spots I hunt, though, year to year it changes whether or not it gets flooded out or you know what I mean. Okay. So it's like I think their patterns shift, because I love like big wide open river bottoms that are kind of hilly and water will come up one year and be up to the top of that hill, and the next year it won't be, and
right.
So it all kind of fluctuates like that to where I think their patterns change based upon that water level and also crops.
Right, and I don't have that. I have these giant mountains that underneath the timber canopy, there's some scrapes that have existed for a long time.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
But I can still go in and manipulate those deer, which is really interesting. I can take that same exact look, build it, construct it, identity, keep my human scent out of it, and get those deer to act as if, how in the heck did they miss it? And then they start checking it. And my does, what's incredible is my doe family group, when they find it, they'll often camp out on it. Like, it's super important to them. They'll camp out real close to it and just use it all the time. A lot of times my does are using it way more in April, May, June, July on the licking branch. My does are very consistent.
Yeah.
My bucks, that if I can be positioned close to where a big buck is bedding, he'll use it a lot. If he doesn't move into that area until, say, October, then he'll start using it a lot more then. So I play the whole scrape game with bucks in September and October when they're actually in more of a summer area, a lot of times higher elevation. I'll go in and put one right in their face next to their bedding area, and it just forces them to come and check it.
Okay. So like you would say that like super early season, because I was going to ask you that. That was going to be kind of the next thing I wanted to kind of get to is right before, season. What are you doing? So that makes sense. You're forcing a buck to get out of his bed that he might not normally do because he wants to kind of cruise and just check those.
Yeah, I've got it. That big deer I hunted early this year. He's smart as hell. He's public land. He's been pressured. Where he lives, trust me, there's plenty of people hunting and know of him. He's been on other people's cameras. I know it. And
Yeah.
I mean, he's just too incredible not to, and he gets plenty of foot traffic. So I found a spot on him that was hard to get to, and I knew he was bedding over in this north because I started getting him on my camera all summer in the broad daylight, midday. I was close to him, and I had a feeling I was going to be close when I hung this camera. But what I did is went in there and shed hunted the hell out of it in April, and I found this giant community scrape where I thought, oh my gosh, it's got to be close to where he hangs early season. So what I did is just overmarked that big community scrape in April, and guess who the first mature buck was on that camera in April and May? Him. He shows up in May, and what I think he had done is migrated back in May, and he went right to one of his favorite spots because of the food source that was there for him all through the summer. And that food source, I literally have video of him, 30-second video after 30-second video of him standing around my scrape eating that food source. And so I'm playing everything, and I'm considering everything in the early season. You got to have the food. You got to be close to the bed. He's not going to move much in the daylight. So why not juice a scrape up that's a community style scrape that they're comfortable checking the licking branch on, even in the early season? Why not?
Yeah. So now he's got those extra scents and trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah, I've got him
good.
with this. Yeah, I'm just straight biology on him. His stomach, water was there. I had water there. I had his food there. I threw a scrape at him. And I was probably, if I had to guess, I never purposely walked into right where I thought he was laying down because I didn't want to blow him off the mountain. Because wolf and lion hunted whitetails will leave. When they get hunted by mountain lions and wolves their whole life, like when the wolves come in on me, guess what happens to my big bucks for about a month?
Oh, yeah.
I never see him again.
They cruise out, yeah.
Sometimes I don't see him till the next year. Depends on what time of year it is. So I purposely didn't walk in and try to find his physical bed, but I had him on camera and video coming up out of this north, and it was obvious where he was coming from up this trail. And I had backtracked and walked that trail shed hunted, so I knew right where that trail headed down into the north face. And it was nice and cool down there, and he had a big spring down in below him, so I know that's where he was camped, and that's where he was always coming up. And I had 3 cameras, sometimes 4 on him the whole summer because I really was trying to gather info on him. And then I hung my stand, when was it? Probably August. And I got to hunt him September, all the month of September. But only, I think because of the distance, I got to hunt him 5 or 6 hunts. Which, I also didn't want to overhunt the spot and just blow him out. But I was really close at the end of September to taking my mobile and moving closer to where I thought he was coming from. And the only thing I might change is if I had to go back and do it over again, knowing what I know now, I probably should have moved about 150 yards in a specific direction to try to pick him up a little closer to his bed. I think he was only bedded 250 yards from me max, though. Yeah. So I probably should have pushed the envelope a little. But my mindset in September was, you got all the way till the middle of December to hunt this deer.
Yeah.
And then I had
Yeah.
wolves come in. I had wolves come in on October 6th, and I haven't seen him since.
Yeah. See, I don't have
And
to
that's
worry
just
about
the way it
that.
goes. What's that?
I said I definitely don't have to worry about that here in
Yeah, the
Illinois,
wolves.
or at least yet.
Yeah, I had the wolves show up, and I have not seen that. Well, that deer I got snowed out on that deer pretty early, and ended up changing over to a different deer that was killable too. So I didn't spend as much time on that buck. But when I saw those wolves come through, and then I had a full month of not having him on camera the whole month of October, um, obviously I want to go kill a deer, and I got other good big deer to hunt. So I just jumped on some other bucks. And then when I went back in November to check on him, I couldn't find him.
Yeah, that
And,
sucks. Well,
yeah, and
hopefully
that's just
next year,
part of
right?
it.
As
Yeah,
long as he shows up.
yeah, and that's part of it. He might be dead. He might be wolf shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he might be alive, and if he is alive, he's a buck of a lifetime, and I'll hunt. The one thing I'm going to do, you want to talk, to prep for him this year. I've already mapped it all out. I've got 5 spots picked out of where I'm going to set up these community scrapes and see if I can't locate him in some other huntable areas. And if you look at it on a map, it's real steep, topographical ground that really has a lot of fluctuation to it as far as terrain elevation. I'm literally circling him this year. I'm going to circle where I had his bedding area out to almost a mile all the way around him. And I'm going to see if I can pick him up in a better hideout that he uses to where maybe he'll be more comfortable, during October, November.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No, that's all good information. I think that's pretty good. I think we covered it pretty good, as far as how you're breaking it down. I find that helpful, and there's definitely some things I'm going to try and apply now that you've kind of shed more light on them. I know we kind of touched base on some of that stuff before, but it's good to kind of compound on that and be able to build my base and my arsenal with it. So with that being said, Troy, I think it's awesome, and I thank you for coming on. Before we go, can you kind of tell everybody where they can find you and all the cool stuff you've talked about, the products and whatnot?
Yeah, you bet. Buck Fever Synthetics USA. Anybody that wants to try the Buck Fever Synthetics line of scent, I've been using it for over 20 years. I absolutely love it. It doesn't spook deer. It works excellent. The forehead gland for the licking branch, and then the multiple different types of urine profiles that you can put in a scrape. They're just incredible. And I usually do a big show out here every year and have a shipment of Buck Fever too, so some guys can message me directly if they're looking for some products, and I can help that way. And I'll give you my Instagram in a sec. And then film for Whitetail Addictions TV and the Lone Wolf Custom Gear guys. We use all their stands. To find me on social media, Mountain Man, MTN, MAN _33 is my Instagram handle. And then Troy Pottenger on YouTube. I'm starting to compile some stuff for YouTube. I've got a lot of big plans for YouTube this year. I'm excited to get a lot of semi-live type videos going here real soon. Like, I literally worked on my YouTube format today and got it ready to go. And then just Troy Pottenger on Facebook, which is pretty loaded. But I always try to save space for the whitetail guys and go through and clean it out every now and then. And, the people that really, truly want to talk whitetails, I really enjoy that. So,
Troy,
yeah.
What's that group that you're part of? I can't remember the name of it. That's on Facebook.
Please come over and visit our mobile hunter site, Lone Wolf Custom Gear, Mobile Hunters United.
Yeah, Mobile Hunters United. That's it. I see
United. Yeah.
A lot of times, guys will post something, kind of pull you into it, and then you'll drop some knowledge or something on them. I always like reading those.
Yeah, and they just asked me to help moderate that site, so I'll be on there more often.
Cool. All right, man. I appreciate it, Troy. Thanks for coming on and sharing. And if anybody wants to reach out and find you, you told them where to get in touch with you. So
absolutely, and thanks for having me, Luke.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep in touch too, because as the season progresses, I'm sure there will be questions, Troy. So
sounds great. I really appreciate it.
once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.